Sorry, I turned it on and then turned it off. Good morning and welcome all of you to the first meeting of the new General Purposes Committee. Some of us old hands may have sat on the original committee, but this one I think is going to be very different. It's a smaller cohort of members, but with just as important work to do. What I will do when officers are speaking, I will ask officers to introduce themselves because we have a relatively new councillor, Robert Hambidge, who might not know all of you. So if you could do that, that would be great. The first item is, please note the copy of the terms of reference, which has been attached to the agenda. Are there any questions from committee members on those terms of reference? I see none, so we'll take them as read. Thank you. We'll move on to item 2. Do we have any apologies, Julie?
Madam Chairman, we have no apologies.
Thank you. Item 3, declaration of interest. If any committee member has an interest to declare, please do so now, or if you think of it during the meeting, do so then. Item 4, I'm not aware of any urgent business. Number 5, non-members wishing to address the meeting, all very welcome. And we move on to item 6, member training, which is going to be a standing item, and I'm going to pass over to Sarah for her verbal report. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So nothing really to add to the report that has been shared with you already, which outlines the member training programme. But in addition to that, as part of the former member development panel, members had fed into the development of a training needs assessment survey, which we would suggest and we shared with members ahead of the new intake next year after the election, to get a real sense of what kind of training needs new members as well as existing members felt that they needed to be really effective in their role. So my suggestion, Chair, was that we would share that draft survey with the new General Purposes Committee to give them an opportunity to also feed in their views before we look to circulate that. The other survey, or you'll remember, Chair, that at the last member development panel, we also had someone come along to talk to us from the digital team to look at how we might improve the members' intranet pages as well. And to assist with that, we've also got a short survey that's been developed by the digital team to share with members to get their views and their suggestions on how we could make that a more useful resource for members going forward. So again, my suggestion would be that so that this committee has proper oversight and an opportunity to input, that we circulate the links to both of those surveys after this meeting.
Sounds a good idea. Everybody happy with that? So please keep checking your screens for those surveys coming through. Thank you, Sarah. I will open the floor to questions in a moment, but I've got one. On the statistics that have come back, because so many members ask for things to be put via Zoom, I'm just a bit disappointed that not more members have taken up that opportunity. And training is voluntary, but we're trying to open up the different ways for people to learn, different times of day, if it's face-to-face or Zoom, etc. And perhaps that's something this committee could encourage other people to take part in. Questions from the floor? Tristan.
People, sorry, just on that point with regards to people not attending Zoom meetings, are we able to put in a process whereby people can tell why they're not able to attend, so that we can gain data to try and learn from that and increase attendance?
I'll go back to Sarah on that one. We'd have to be careful with GDPR, etc., wouldn't we? And, you know, at the end of the day, it is voluntary, but
It's something like a drop-down menu or
Okay.
a bullet point list that you can just say, you know, work reasons or whatever.
so perhaps that could be part of the survey response, which we can look into, providing we are aware of people's confidentiality, etc.
One of the things in the draft survey that we've got from the training needs assessment is to get a much better sense of people's availability and the times of day that they and the means which they would prefer to have their training delivered. So would they prefer virtual? Do they prefer face-to-face? What times of the day and week are also more convenient for them? So hopefully that will help us to kind of improve attendance on some of those core training events. But in terms of us understanding why people aren't turning up for specific training events, that's slightly more difficult, because if they're not attending, it's harder for us to get feedback from them. But we could certainly follow up with a survey, not just to those people who attended, to see whether they found it useful, but potentially sending it back out to everyone to say, was there a reason why you weren't able to attend this course, and try and get some of that feedback as well.
Does that help, Tristan?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, and Linda.
It occurs to me that it would be useful to take great care in how you ask the questions, because I, for one, have no problem at all with coming to meetings. I live quite close, it's easy for me, but I can do virtual meetings. If I vote for either of those, it's going to unfairly balance the count. If you allow for can come to on face-to-face meetings, would prefer it, not keen, and can come to face-to-face meetings, cannot do Zoom, then you've got a different program. I mean, the questions I've just put are not the ideal ones, but you need to find out whether it's can do Zoom, can't reach meetings because of work, that sort of question. So a little more detail in the questions might give you much better feedback.
Okay, thank you very much. Robert.
Yeah, as a newcomer,
Welcome to Brecon.
going to miss a lot of the initial stuff, and at the moment it's like a tsunami of stuff coming at me, which really is quite a job to take it all in. The member training plan, are you allowed, can you go back and see them on a Zoom meeting or whatever? Are they recorded that we can go back and have a look?
I don't know whether, Teresa, you've got any information on that, have you?
Yes, councillor, the presentations are available on the members page, which you can access through your iPad. So presentations that we have received should be on there. If there's anything that you need support with or can't find, then do contact us.
Any other questions from the floor? Gordon, welcome.
Thank you. I didn't come intending to say something, but as this subject has come up, and it is very close to me, as you will know, I think we must not miss, and this committee must not miss, the fact that there are 49 existing members, and some of those, especially those from the last intake, could be used to guide where the training goes. I mean, it is very important that members know best what members need to know. And sometimes, I'm sorry, officers perhaps forget that, because you all have a day job. And it is quite important that we need to know the things that we need to know. And I've been a member for longer than I'd like to think about, but I have to say I do still attend training when I can, because it is important and we're learning something new every day. But I would like this committee to always remember 49 members, all of whom know something. We should use that.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And of course, this meeting is open to any member to attend, the same as member development was. But once again, it's encouraging people to take part if they want to. Thank you very much. Alison, out at the back.
Thank you. I'm not going to comment on that. Right, thank you, Chairman. Right, okay. For housing, the housing presentations, we had day presentations and we asked why there was a fairly low uptake of them. We were told it was because it was during the day that people work, and we understand all that side of things. So the housing team worked extremely hard to provide evening sessions. And we've been, I'm going to be honest, we've been disappointed about the amount of people that have took up the opportunity of it. I think it's disheartening for the officers when they put a lot of effort into doing courses and then members are, you know, not joining in, not participating. So I think what you're doing is 100% right. I don't think you're going to please everybody because let's face it, us as councillors have certain times when we have to go to council meetings in the evenings. And, you know, we have town and parish councils to go to, but to try and track maybe a time or an evening which would suit the majority of the councillors might stand a better chance of getting better attendance to Zoom calls. I can understand turning out in a wet, windy evening to come to Elizabeth House is not ideal. A lot of the presentations given online, in my opinion, have been brilliant. They've been worked together with the audiences and been very beneficial. So I think 100% right. It's the way of finding out exactly what is the best, most common time, if you like, for all the parties to participate to get the best out of training. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm sure Sarah's taken all those notes. Thank you. Susan.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say to Alison that I think you're absolutely right, that it is really difficult trying to get a time that suits everybody. And I think some of the problem is, for instance, with the housing, which I thought was brilliant, and I attended 2 of the 3, but unfortunately the 3rd one was cancelled, and then when it was at a new date, I wasn't able to attend that. So I think sometimes there are legitimate reasons, you know, like cancellations, when it is difficult for people. But you're never going to please everybody. You know, if you have them in the evening, there's people who don't like to drive after dark or whatever. And if you have them in the day, people work. So I just wondered if some of the training should be compulsory, that it should be said that everyone who's a councillor should attend training on A, B, and C.
Gordon and Alison will probably agree with me on this, that if we could make some of it mandatory, we would. So for instance, people on planning or on licensing have to do a certain amount of training to give them the tools to do their job. But there are other aspects like the code of conduct and etc. that I think would be very useful to be mandatory. And that might be something we think of going ahead as we're looking to appoint a new council next year. Let's make it quite clear to candidates what the expectation of their role is. It isn't just coming to 1 meeting a month, as somebody told a colleague of mine 3 years ago. It's a commitment to the role, isn't it? But I'm sure Sarah's taken all this on board, and then we can make sure we address it. So people have choice. Robert.
Yeah, if we sort of take my day job as a farmer, I have to have a license to spray crops. And to do that, I have to obtain 30 development points throughout a 3-year period to qualify for the next 3-year period, if you understand what I mean. Would it not be an idea that we have to obtain 5 points, you know, a point per meeting attended? That way you need, for argument's sake, to attain 10 points or whatever, we've got to talk about that, for your 4-year period.
Thank you. Sarah, have you got anything to say on that? from a legal point of view?
So I've just made a note. I think we just need to check the legality of enforcing members to attend certain training. Certainly agree with the chair, licensing and planning are more or less the exceptions, because obviously you need to ensure that members are trained because it relates to certain legal issues. But general training, I think it is a point well made, and I think it's something that we need to explore and will explore.
Linda?
I'm interested in the idea, and having had to do compulsory development training in my career, I can see the advantage of it. What I need to know is, can we have any kind of sanction if people fail to do it?
So that was what was then going through my mind. In actual fact, if you don't do it, what can we do? You know, I suppose we could tie it in perhaps with the code of conduct or something like that. But as you're aware, under the code of conduct and the legislation currently standing, we can't suspend. We have no authority to suspend councillors. So it's, if we go against our own rules, if indeed that is what we could and should do, what are the actual sanctions? Because obviously at the end of the day, you're appointed by the electorate, and really it's only the electorate that can remove you, which will be at the next ballot. So I think it's something that we need to consider.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, and again, I'm looking at colleagues that have been here some time, we used to have a personal development system, didn't we? Where we had one-to-one interviews with somebody usually from HR. You know, because if people have got aspirations to become chairman or cabinet or whatever, they need that opportunity to do so. So sort of a training program was built out for them. And the first year we did that, so I said to the officer who no longer works here, where does this information go? Nowhere, it sits in a filing cabinet. And I'm thinking, why do we do that then? So it's about creating something for people to be able to say, either to their own political group or to HR or Dem Services, I might be a trained accountant, but I don't want anything to do with money. I want to do something different. And it's about creating that opportunity for all members, old and new, to say, actually, I really fancy having a crack at this. What do I need to do about it? Does that make sense? Sarah?
I think the idea of having some kind of point system is quite an attractive one, but I wonder whether...
Sarah, can you just move your microphone a bit closer
Yeah, of
to you?
course.
Thank you.
Can you hear me better now? Yeah. But I wonder whether we could maybe look at it the other way. So it's more of an encouragement. So actually, the more points you accrue, you actually kind of reach a different standard in terms of your professional development, in the same way that other organisations like CIPD, you build points depending on how much further sort of training and development you've done over the last 12 months. Whether it could be a more positive thing, so you kind of reach a certain standard of learning and development, rather than it being enforced on people. Because I think, you know, we will certainly take that away and have a look at it, but I think it would be, I don't think there's any requirement other than planning and licensing. I don't think that there is any requirement for members to specifically do any other training. It would be quite a challenge, I think, for us to mandate it, but we could certainly find other more creative ways to encourage it.
Alison and then Gordon.
I just had a thought, I don't know whether it's a suggestion, is to think more about the online training, you know, the courses which people pull up when they want to, and then there's a little test at the end. I know it sounds a bit naughty, and I know it's not as good as sitting here and talking to people, but it's still a good way of getting information about, it's just a suggestion, because it can be done as and when they can fit it in then.
Okay, Gordon?
Thank you. Just returning to the point about compulsory, and I absolutely agree with you, Robert. It would be absolutely wonderful if there could be a standard for training, but we have been into that in the past, and it is not possible. It's not legal to have to limit what councillors do simply because of their training. I mean, we are a political organisation. I spent about, I think probably about 5 or 6 years on the member development panel for the East of England Local Government Association when it was in existence. And that was looked at very, very closely because there are, let's face it, some damn fantastic councillors up and down the country. There are also a very few who are pretty useless. And wouldn't it be nice if that could be policed? But it couldn't, because as somebody has already said, we are elected by the, let's say, 5,000 people in your ward. And they're your employers, as it were, and they're the ones you're answerable to. So it's very difficult. I can point to, we recently had some training in the licensing team and for the licensing committee. And I attended that. I thank goodness I was allowed to. And quite honestly, it was jolly good fun. It was an all-day event, which everybody doesn't like. But whenever I've been to all-day events, they've always turned out to be really good. And I think really with our training and how you do it, I don't know, because some trainers are very good, like James Button, who did that. Some trainers like are not so good. And we probably need to look at the quality of the training and how it's done to encourage people to come. If you're a councillor and you're dedicated to your community, then I think training should be something that you would want to do. And I can't understand why sometimes people don't. But training is, I think, an important part of being a councillor, because we're coming into a very strange world, aren't we? We do need to get to understand it. So, but we can't, and I have been into it. There used to be 57 councils in the East of England, and they've all looked at it, and you can't actually do it. So, I mean, Sarah will do her due diligence as a lawyer, but I think that's what she'll find.
Thank you very much. So member training is going to be a standing item on this agenda, which I've asked for. And between now and the next meeting, Sarah will get those links out for the surveys and things. And please, guys, feed in as much as you absolutely want to. Talk to your colleagues, and we'll do our best. Thank you. Right, I'm going to move on to item 7 now, which is the community team service review. Report of Alison at the back. And
Thank
could I
you.
just ask, remind officers to introduce themselves when they speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Alison Webb, I'm the Cabinet Executive Member for Housing, Health and Communities, a big team to look after anyhow. Today, I'm very pleased to bring forward the community team service review. The team have been working extremely hard on this, so I hope you're going to be impressed with what they're going to present. As members, as you're aware, the pandemic has fundamentally changed the way we work with our communities, bringing us closer than ever to the groups and organisations who work tirelessly to ensure that communities are safe and well. The Inspiring Communities theme within our corporate plan sets out our commitment to continue to harness the strength of our community partners, groups and organisations, and to help them recover from the lasting effects of the pandemic. Something that also aligns to the priorities of the upcoming integrated care system, which some of you may be aware about, and the government's recently published vision for levelling up the UK. This is a really exciting time for working with our communities, but to deliver all this effectively and to make the most of the partnerships and other opportunities, we need to make sure that we have the right skills in the right place. We have therefore considered the structure needed to meet service outcomes, and I'll hand over to Samantha to provide an overview of the changes and feedback from the consultation process. Thank you very much. Over to you, Samantha.
Thank you, Alison. Samantha Armitage, I'm Community Services Manager. So our service essentially focuses on our communities, and it spans the prevention of vulnerability through early intervention services such as collaboration, which is our weekly multi-agency, multi-partner meeting, social prescribing services, which are in partnership with the NHS, providing holistic support to people with non-clinical needs, and tackling issues through our Inspiring Communities programme, such as loneliness, mental health, domestic abuse, and county lines. We're also focusing on addressing health inequalities through the integrated care system to improve the health and well-being of our communities through the key partnerships and through community engagement. And we're ensuring our residents have a safe place to live through the partnership we have with the police, the operational partnership team. So with all of that, we want to refocus the specialist skill set within the team. And so the proposed changes are that we delete the locality team leader post, which is a grade 7, and replace with a community team leader post, grade 7. We will then delete locality officer posts ×2 and replace one of those with a health and wellbeing officer and one of those with an early intervention officer. So those 3 post changes will focus around the health and wellbeing, early intervention and community development that we do as a service. Whilst outside of the scope of the service review, it's worth mentioning within this that we also intend to recruit 2 community enablers on a 2-year fixed term. This will be funded by the Inspiring Communities Reserve, the £1 million 3-year programme, and the budget for these posts was approved back in 2020 when the vulnerability programme was approved. The community enablers will be focusing on working proactively with community groups and organisations. The resource will provide representation across all departments of the council and will act as a liaison to our community groups to ensure a better coordination of information to our communities. Not only will it span community development, so supporting groups to sort of create projects and activities around wellbeing, but it will also support the council's efforts in sustainability through Brecon 35, the environmental services issues, supporting communities with housing issues, community safety. And this is to ensure that our communities only have to tell their story once. So they've got a point of contact for all inquiries across the council through these posts. So these are our community enablers. The proposed changes are cost neutral and do not increase establishment numbers because the 2 new community enabler posts are funded from reserve. So this is a cost neutral service review, as I said, not increasing establishment numbers. There are 2 members of staff affected by the changes because one of the locality officer posts was already vacant. Those 2 members of staff have been through the consultation process and both early on identified themselves as slot-ins. So we've got the locality team leader has successfully identified himself as a slot-in to the community team leader post. And we've got one of the locality officers who has successfully identified herself as a slot-in to the early intervention officer post, subject to approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from the floor? Justin.
So I was confused, and this is my ignorance, no doubt. I was confused how we're increasing 2 posts, but at the same time it's cost neutral. Is that money, would that money not otherwise be spent if it's not spent on this, or this is something else?
I think if I interpreted Sam's explanation is the 2 extra posts are being funded from that £1 million reserve, which has already been set aside for inspiring communities. So some of that money is being used for posts.
So,
Alison, can you add to that?
Of course, yeah, you're absolutely right, Liz. Sorry, Chair. The Inspiring Communities £1 million is a lot of money, which is being actually channeled into the areas which are best going to help our communities. How things are, since COVID is now hopefully waning off, the communities need our extra help. We need to refocus our teams. The team has looked at all different ways of doing it. The extra posts are essential to make sure that this transition period works and gets the best for our communities. So the money has already been approved. It's no extra cost. It's using some of the money out of the Inspiring Communities Fund, which I think is a good use. And I can.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. Just to add, as I said, so the budget line for within that reserve for those 2 additional posts was approved with the approval of the vulnerability programme. They weren't recruited to because, of course, of the pandemic. So as Alison quite rightly said, we're now in a position where we're looking at post-pandemic recovery, and those posts will be used to support the communities to do that. So the cost neutral refers to the fact that we're not increasing the cost to the organisation in terms of cost and numbers of establishments. So and hence why they're also fixed term posts.
Okay. Anybody else from the floor? Tristan? No, it's all right. That's
Can
what
I
we're
just
here
ask
for.
how long they're fixed for? 2 years, okay. And then a review would take place?
I think the one plea I would put out as a ward member is absolutely get what you want to do and fully support it. But also you've got your 49 ward members who are the closest ones to the community. So please, like you have with your community's handbook, anything that can be shared with members to help us breach that gap between public, Breckland, elected members, whoever, multi-agency, would be useful. Yeah.
Yeah, just to share actually what I'm doing in anticipation of approval of the service review is I'm actually building a framework and a structure around how we're going to work with our communities. So we're going to be able to share with members how we intend to work with our communities, and also trying to build, which I appreciate is going to be fairly fluid, but a package of resources and a package of support so that it is really clear what is available to members and community groups and organisations. And essentially it will be a bit of a shopping list, I suppose, that members can kind of pick from to be able to support communities. So we're working hard on that in the background at the moment.
Thank you very much. Robert?
Yeah, this is the classic need for training. All members should be made to come to this training to hear what you can offer us to offer the people in our wards. So, boom.
And one of the successful routes we do that sometimes is at the end of a full council meeting, when you've got a captive audience, is for someone like Sam to come along for 15 minutes, or Alison, whoever, and just tell everybody in the room what it's about. So it is a training session, but we don't call it that. We have to think smart now, don't we? And I think other officers in the room will agree that that's sometimes the best way, is a 15-minute sort of soundbite, really. And here you are, guys, your package is on the members' intranet or wherever it is. So we'll keep that up as well. Linda?
You may think I'm being facetious, but if we do that, the council meeting should have a coffee break about 2/3 of the way through. And at the end of the meeting, there should be no coffee break, because people have a way of sliding out and forgetting to come back.
We will make sure that's passed on to the chairman, men and women. Yeah. But this is where we have to think smart. Where do we have the biggest number of people at one time? That's the time you grab them. So if there's no other comment or question from the floor, there's a recommendation here. Members approve the implementation of the revised staff structure for the current community team as detailed in the report. Do I have a show of hands to accept that recommendation? Oh, sorry. That's why. May I have a proposer, please, for that recommendation? Tristan, thank you. And a seconder? Robert, all in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And with that, we move on to the next meeting, which will be Tuesday, the 5th of April at 2 o'clock here. And the DEM services team and I are going to work on further dates going forward, because these meetings will happen quite often. And although there will be some set dates, sometimes we aren't asked to stand up to deal with the emergency issue. So that's difficult because we're quite a small team, and I absolutely get it that people have got to work or got a hospital appointment or whatever it is. So we will try and give as much notice as we can. So we'll make sure you get the set dates, but don't be surprised to be called in for an emergency one. And as long as we have 3, we're quorate. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you, officers, and enjoy the rest of your windy, wet day.